feel like I should have known this before we got married.
I'm like, this is a banned book. I gotta read this thing. Bateman always looks like a dork.
Yo, we have it, cause we talking movies on the podcast. So I married a film critic. So I married a film critic. So I married a film critic. Hey honey, I just want to talk about the movie like casually. You don't have to bring up the cinematography. Honestly, let's just talk about like how the characters were fun. Married a film critic.
Welcome to So I Married a Film Critic. We are back on YouTube for all of you visual people.
As if listening to this wasn't insufferable enough, now you can watch us.
Well, okay. I thought, every once in a while it'd be fun.
Every once in a long while.
And if you are audio only, it's, not going to be any different.
You're
for
getting
you.
the better cut of this episode.
Okay. So if you are audio only and you did like watching our YouTube content, I will be attempting to make the visuals interesting.
Oh, what are you promising? Wow.
Well,
this is news to me, listeners, viewers. I don't know what she's talking about.
Not interesting like us, more interesting, but like maybe clips from the film.
Oh, very good.
That kind of stuff.
Okay, good.
Stills, stuff we're talking about.
This is an R-rated movie, so I can't wait to see what clips you pick and choose for this episode.
I know. Okay, so we're talking about American Psycho. So let's jump into it because you have read the book.
Yeah.
And
as I suspect everyone has. Everyone's read American Psycho, right?
I don't think so.
It came out in 91, and we knew it was coming quite some time in advance because it was already very controversial. The original publishers dropped it.
Oh.
Yeah, and there was a period where it was like, is this thing ever going to come out? It's Bret Easton Ellis, who I think at that point everyone knew him for Less Than Zero, as well as a companion book called The Rules of Attraction, which also became a movie. Yeah, he doesn't write feel-good stories. He writes stories about... I
hated that movie.
Okay, well, you'd love the book. His works are about youth out of control, about substance abuse, sexual abuse. I mean, it's like basically a Just Say No horror story. So he wrote particularly about nihilism, sexual, social nihilism in the 80s.
I want to see what his therapist says about him.
I don't want to hear what the therapist... I don't want to see those notes. I'm sure they look like Patrick Bateman's notes, actually.
I know.
But we knew this book was coming.
We knew American Psycho was coming?
They knew the book was coming because there was all this write-up about it long before it hit the shelves. And it was very strange. I remember when it first became available at the local Walden Books, it was only available in it never came out on hardcover. It was always paperback, which I thought was really strange. I remember there's a stack of them, and there wasn't like an advisory, but I mean, it definitely had a stay away quality to it.
Didn't they put some in plastic wrap?
Yes, in some, and I don't think it was for every place. I think there was some countries that did it. I don't know if American ever did. I always saw it just on the shelf. But, I mean, it was banned in a lot of places. There were libraries that wouldn't carry it. So, of course, our wonderful library carried it. And, of course, I couldn't wait to get my grubby hands on it.
Okay,
and I read it cover to cover.
How old were you?
13. 13 or 14.
That's crazy.
I was really young, yeah.
That's way too
young. Well, the thing is, like, unlike a lot of books that came out at this time that were banned, the Salman Rushdie's The Satanic Verses is the one that comes to mind. I mean, I read that cover to cover. I can't claim that I understood all the allegorical and metaphorical stuff, but just as a straight-up story, I found it really engaging and interesting. And by the way, for those of you who don't know what that is, it's nowhere near as interesting as the title would indicate. It's actually a really beautiful and whimsical fantasy story. It's not what you'd think the Satanic Verses would be. American Psycho, on the other hand, really delivered.
It is what you think it would be. It's
a weird read because the structure of it is really striking. It's every page, like there's no paragraphs. It's just blocks and blocks and blocks of words. It's first person, this guy named Patrick Bateman, and a lot of the stuff is really banal. It's like you're going through his stream of consciousness through the 80s. I went to a store. I bought a suit. The suit was for sale. I went to the latest Friday the 13th movie. I got the latest Kajagoogoo album from Sam Goody. And you're reading this and like, where's the story? And then like 11 pages in, it'll be like, and then I went downtown. I went into a back alley and I murdered a homeless man with a fork. And then I went to this restaurant. Had this amazing, like the whole thing is like that. It has these horrific bursts of violence that come out of nowhere. And I mean, the stuff in it is so vile and sickening. I'd never read anything like that in my life. I'd never envisioned some of that stuff in my life. So it was really like, wow, this is a really devious story, a really devious mind. Like, I got it. I understood why it was banned. I understood why even the people at the bookstore were like, are you old enough for that, young man?
The librarians here were like, here you go.
Here you go, Barry. Reading is fun. So,
as long as the kids are reading, right?
and that's actually what my mother used to say until she realized, like, how many Stephen King books does he own?
Yeah.
Like, 14. Well, maybe. So yeah, I read it when it came out, and I was really horrified by it. I think that's the only proper response to it. And it ends in a very nihilistic way. I remember like the last thing in it is that Bateman sees this sign and it's like no exit, which is a theater reference. So it's I didn't find it remotely funny. I didn't see it as satire because it was so real. It was 91.
And
the
you were
80s
13.
The 80s had just happened. So I'm like I don't care that he's making references to Boy George or Tom Cruise because like that's still pop culture.
I know. And don't you think it's hard for a 13-year-old to understand that stuff?
Yes and no, especially because at this age, for me, satire was Saturday Night Live and The Naked Gun,
right.
And Woody Allen. Like
it's clearly comedy that you had, understood to be satire.
Yes, and even biting satire. For me, this was just really sick. So when they announced roughly 10 years later that a movie was coming, I said, well, that's fascinating because that's impossible. You can't make that book into a movie. It's and I don't use this term lightly, but it's pornographic. In terms of violence, it was pornographic. It was so disgusting. So I was, of course, fascinated. They initially announced that it was going to be directed by Oliver Stone and starring Leonardo DiCaprio. This was the big thing that DiCaprio was circling on. After Titanic. And I get it. He didn't want to be typecast. I totally get it. And, as he proved, I would say more so in Romeo and Juliet and Basketball Diaries and Gilbert Grape, This Boy's Life, he was a major actor. So I get it. He didn't want to be on the cover of Teen Beat for the rest of his life. I get it. But what a weird project. And then Oliver Stone, after Natural Born Killers, like, what's that movie going to be like? And thankfully, it fell apart. And the original artist who were circling it was Mary Harron, who had made this movie called I Shot Andy Warhol. A good film, a disturbing film, but I didn't love it as much as everyone else did. And then Bale, at this point, I knew him for Newsies. That was always my...
Little Women.
And I would say Empire of the Sun, and you would say...
Little Women.
What was the other one?
Oh.
He did. Yeah, I guess that's it. Yeah, he was primarily.
I don't think I'd seen him in anything else.
Okay, all right.
Well, let's see.
So, yeah, and Bale was, he was. Of course, people knew him, especially for Empire of the Sun and certainly Newsies, but he wasn't the name that he is now. This is before Batman. Mm-hmm. This is before The Machinist. This is before Reign of Fire. So it was a strange choice, to say the least.
So this is what I heard, because he only got paid $50,000 to be in this movie. And the studio was like, fine, you can cast him, but you have to cast like some other well-known names.
Yeah.
And so that's why it has Justin Theroux, Josh Lucas.
Those guys are unknowns, but the movie had Willem Dafoe.
Chloe Sevigny, Reese Witherspoon. Yeah, Jared Leto.
Jared Leto was a name at that point. Yeah.
Willem Dafoe, yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's why some of those bigger names are in the movie.
It was a little film, and you could tell it's not other than the club scenes, it's not an especially well populated movie. It is like it does feel like a small film made on sound stages some of the time. When they made the film, I remember reading about how it was like, oh, it's exciting. Like, Willem Dafoe is coming here, and he's going to shoot for a few days. He's gone. Same thing with Jared Leto. Same thing with Reese Witherspoon. The constants were Christian Bale and Mary Harron.
Okay, so before this, Bale was in Mary, Mother of Jesus, a TV movie.
Where he played the Son of God. That is true.
A Midsummer Night's Dream.
Yeah.
Velvet Goldmine, Metroland, The Secret Agent.
Not all of those are good.
The Portrait of a Lady.
Yeah.
Swing Kids, Little Women. So, yeah.
Swing Kids, that's right.
It really was Little Women that I
Okay.
had seen.
And it's an interesting career because it's completely inconsistent. It's like, is he a dramatic actor? And it's fine. I mean, actors, when they start off very young, they're trying to figure out, which their niche is, what they're comfortable with, what the, kind of role they want to do.
I think I saw Reign of Fire before I saw this movie.
I know you did, yeah, because when you and I saw him at Denver Starfest on stage, and he was there with the director of Reign of Fire talking about that movie.
Yeah.
Somebody from the audience brought up American Psycho, and it was a funny little moment. But he clearly didn't want to talk
really
about it.
knew who he was.
Right.
Because
there were people in the audience who knew him for Newsies and Little
Yeah.
Women, and that was primarily it.
Yeah, and I was stoked. I've been a fan for a long time, before Batman.
And when you and I got married, prior to Batman coming out, I kept saying, it's crazy violent and it's really shocking, but you might want to see American Psycho because that is one of the best performances I've ever seen from an actor in a film.
Yeah.
Because I still have mixed feelings about the movie. I like the film a lot more now than I used to, but for me, Bale's performance was huge.
Pretty funny. I was doing some research, and Josh Lucas, who's in the film with him, basically was like, this guy can't act. I don't know what he's doing. And then he said he didn't understand his performance until he actually saw the movie. Yeah. And that just shows the brilliance right there.
Yeah, I get it. And we'll talk about that. He makes the choices are big, but I don't want to see another actor do this. There's talks of remaking this currently.
Stupid.
We'll get into that. And the director's good, and the talent attached to it is promising. But what Bale does here is pretty amazing, especially considering nobody really expected this movie to turn out the way it did.
Okay, so the first time we watched it together was, I don't know, 20 years ago.
Yeah, I suspect. Yeah, because it was before Batman came out, and I thought, you should see it because it's really, really something.
And so he was like, it's just prepare yourself. And so I remember, I think right away, laughing at a lot of the bits.
Yeah.
And how did that change your perception of the film?
Well, I was so relieved that you enjoyed it so much and that you were laughing so much. Because I always thought the film was darkly funny, but to me it's so disturbing. And the characters on screen, all of them, except for Defoe, all of them are so repellent. Yeah. It's a different experience. Because I saw this thing opening day in the theater, and I was in a crowded auditorium on April 7, 2000, and we were all shocked. I mean, you could hear it in the audience. Like, people, I don't know if anyone was enjoying it. We were certainly watching it. Mm-hmm. I left the theater being blown away by the choices that Bale made, but I don't know that I liked the film. But it certainly made an impression on me. I was so glad that it wasn't the novel. I think that was the thing I walked away with. Like, well, at least they didn't film that book. Which I admire, but I would never read again.
Oh, no. So Mary Harron was like, there's no narrative to this book.
She's right.
Yeah. So she kind of had to take some of the scenes and create a narrative.
Yeah.
So,
And she got Guinevere Turner to write the screenplay, and Turner is fantastic. She and Mary Harron are, and I guess Bale would be the other part. I mean, they're basically the three-headed monster that made this thing. Mm-hmm. Because, to jump into it, it doesn't celebrate Patrick Bateman. And I love Oliver Stone, but I think he would have found him cool. I think he would have made that hip. I think Leonardo DiCaprio probably would have made choices that are...
Well, he kind of played this character in that other movie.
Which other movie?
The other Wall Street movie.
Wolf of Wall Street?
I mean...
In some ways.
It's similar.
Yeah.
A Wall Street guy and doing bad things and people celebrating him.
Yeah, I mean, Oliver Stone basically made this movie too with Wall Street and Wall Street Money Never Sleeps. I mean, the idea, especially the second film, the idea of it's like a Faustian bargain that this boy makes with Gordon Gekko. It turns out Gordon Gekko really is the devil. And for that matter, I guess Devil's Advocate is also that story too.
Yeah.
But Patrick Bateman is, he's really gross. And the circle that he's in... These are terrible dudes.
Yeah.
These are really bad guys.
But Christian Bale did go to Wall Street.
Yeah.
And all the guys were like, "Oh, Patrick Bateman, like, cool." And he's like, "No, like, you're kidding, right?" They're like, "No, we think he's awesome." And I think that's when Christian Bale was like, "Oh no."
And that might have had an effect of how he plays it too, mm-hmm. because the thing that I think is so courageous about his performance is he plays it like Bateman thinks he's awesome. He's self-deluding, mm-hmm. but this guy he's basically a loser with this nihilistic streak.
Yeah.
which is hard to do. It's a weird comparison, but like Hayden Christensen and the Star Wars prequels, not the best comparison, but it's similar in the sense that everybody thinks of Darth Vader as heroic, and he's not. And the way Christensen played him, which people hated, and I'm not saying that's a faultless performance, but I found it really refreshing. Like, okay, Darth Vader's kind of a loser in a mask. And I thought that's great because that's an honest way to portray your villain as opposed to just go with like, yeah, Bateman. I mean, he's a guy in a 3-piece Armani suit. He's murdering people, getting away with it. There is something cool about that on some level. And I feel like Bale strips all that away. Even the fact that he looks as good as he does in the movie and he sounds as interesting as he does, there's something so awful about this person.
Yeah. So I guess let's talk about some of the scenes because there's a lot of theories about this movie. If the murders actually take place, if it's just happening in Patrick Bateman's mind, and you and I have discussed it a little bit, but we kind of think it's a little bit ambiguous if it's real or not. And the director Mary Herron came out and said it wasn't supposed to be ambiguous to her. Like, she thought, no, this guy really did do all these things. But I don't think the movie she made gives us that impression.
Yeah, and it's not her fault. And it's fine. I mean, and the fact that the movie doesn't literally say it, there's no, it's not the ending of Psycho where someone steps forward and lays everything out.
Right.
It's not that. And, that's maybe the one part of that movie that doesn't really work that well, as most would attest, even me, and I'm a huge fan of that movie.
Yeah.
But the fact that, we're in Bateman's mind as much as we possibly can be, and there's all these moments that suggest what he's seeing, what he's feeling, what he's watching, and even what he's envisioning. I certainly think that the film suggests someone who can't tell the difference between real and unreal. And it happens right at the very beginning. The film takes us into the club scene pretty quickly. Mm-hmm. And there's a scene where Bateman is with his bros, and they're all little vampires in suits, not literally, although. And he goes to the bar. He orders a drink. The bartender apparently doesn't give him the right one, or I can't remember.
No, she's like, I don't take cash.
That's what it is. And we see his reflection as he's talking to her, and he says the most vile thing you could probably say to anybody, and she gives him his drink and doesn't react. And you're not sure if she's not reacting because it's like, another awful thing.
Or it's loud and she can't hear him.
Or because it didn't happen. Because he's looking in the mirror, he's thinking what he wants to say, what he can say, what maybe he thinks he should say, but he doesn't. So the film is constantly messing with that. Something awful will happen. He'll say something terrible, and you'll either see it or you'll hear him say it, and then it'll cut back to Bale, and sometimes the angle will be just a little different. Just a little off from where we saw before, suggesting that perhaps this is not a reliable narrator.
Oh, yeah. Like when this woman, she's like, well, what do you do? He's like, I'm in murders and executions. And she's like, oh, mergers and acquisitions, you know?
Yeah. Which, again, it's a joke that she just didn't hear him properly because it is a club setting. But the whole film is like that. There's a moment we've spoken about a lot because Mary Herron has said, it was just a mistake on my part. I want you to take the story seriously. But there's a moment where Bateman has murdered someone. The person is wrapped up.
It's Paul Allen.
It's Paul. Okay, yeah, it's Jared Leto's character, and he's wrapped in a cloth or whatever, and he's pulling him through a lobby, and it leaves this long trail of blood. There's a reverse shot from outside, and the trail of blood isn't there. I guess Mary Herron at some point said that was a flaw on our part. We should have went and made sure, it was a low budget movie. We didn't get the long blood trail. So that was just, oops, a film flub on our part. And others like myself have said like, well, that's telltale right there. He's, he may very well just be taking one of his blankets that it has a stain on it. So he's going to take it because, he's Patrick Bateman. Everything has to be spotless in his life.
Well, and the way people react to him. So he's putting Paul Allen's body in the trunk, and this guy is like, "Oh, what a great bag! Where'd you get that bag? What kind of bag is it?" And it's like, doesn't even acknowledge that it's the shape of a body. I mean, how would you mess that up?
Yeah, most people don't take him seriously, which is another thing that's really funny about this character because he's not Norman Bates. He's not disarmingly sweet. He's a jerk. He's always a jerk. He's only polite when he absolutely has to be, and that's with the Willem Dafoe character because he's an authority figure. Yeah. Beyond that, he suffers no fools, and to him, everyone's a fool.
Okay, here's my theory. I think, because the very first murder is the homeless man and his dog.
Yeah.
And that's sort of right after, I don't know, where he's all the scenes kind of where he's with the guys, they kind of go together. But it's always like, ugh, I almost had a heart attack thinking we didn't have, a reservation. And I'm so glad. Right. My anxiety was at a peak, and thank God we had a reservation, So he's always like sweating and just like really anxious about, how he's perceived and,
right.
Where are they at Dorsia, like the place that's really hard to get into.
Club,
yeah. I actually love every time someone calls Dorsia to get a reservation, the guy just laughs. So anyways, I think that first murder of the homeless man and his dog could actually be real. That might be the one that sets him off into his psychosis.
Maybe only because the camera doesn't hide away from it. It's pretty harsh.
Yeah.
It's painful to watch. Thankfully it's mercifully brief.
Yeah.
Mary Herron doesn't make a movie that is clearly in love with gore. This is not really a movie for the Fangoria crowd. So I don't totally disagree with you there. But at the same time, it also speaks, because remember early in the movie, he's kind of making fun of the whole idea of we are the world. He's making fun of those who are different from him, racially speaking.
I know.
He's making fun of those in a different class bracket.
Yeah.
So this could be another one of his sick fantasies about what he'd like to do to the homeless person behind his building.
It could be, but, he's like, well, why don't you get a job? Just get a job. And then he kills him. And I think...
And stomps his dog, which is pretty awful.
I know. Where's John Wick when you need him?
No kidding.
No, I think that this murder could actually be the only one in the movie that's not in his head, and that this, brings up his fantasies to get more and more outrageous.
That's interesting, because for the most part, he only goes after people who can't fight him. He goes after homeless people. He goes after prostitutes. Mm-hmm. He rarely ever,
Paul Allen,
who's a threat just because he's the next Patrick Bateman.
Yeah.
Anyone who's in his sphere and is a political threat, so to speak. Although what Patrick Bateman's politics, his life, his beliefs are. I love that everything in this movie is completely sterile. There's no personality. Nobody has their own personal pictures up anywhere. All the offices look like they come out of catalogs. The clubs don't even have pictures of there's no sense of anything having any kind of identity. This movie could take place in Toronto or Tokyo, but even those places have distinction. This is like a world where no one is leaving a mark.
Mm-hmm. And that's clear in the business card scene.
The legendary business card scene.
Which is so funny. But one thing that another guy on YouTube pointed out is that if you look at the business cards closely, they all misspell acquisitions.
Oh, that's funny.
And they're not even lined up correctly. So they're all crap. They're all really bad. And I think the font on one of them is also used in the font for the movie credits.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just funny that they're all like, ooh, here's my business card, check it out. And then the next person pulls out his crappy business card and it's just as crappy, but everyone's so envious. And that's why it's hilarious.
It's a brilliant scene because it's talking about male masculinity in a really, in a very not subtle way, but it's really sharp. A choice that I want to talk about because the people that didn't connect with this movie when it came out, one of the arguments was that they didn't like Bale's performance, that he was giving this really big performance. Something I noticed this time that I didn't notice before was the movie establishes immediately where the parlance comes from, where the way he speaks comes from. The opening scene I think it's a beautiful opening credit sequence where we see these little red drops go past the screen. You're like, okay, it's blood. I know it's this strawberry glaze being put on this very elaborate dish at this very elaborate restaurant. The food goes out to Patrick Bateman's table, and we're kind of being introduced into his world. And every one of the waiters talks just like him. It's a strawberry glaze with a nice little cream sauce that you'll find so enjoyable. They're all speaking that way. And as we learn about, if there's anything we can learn about Bateman, is he's somebody who acquires all this crap without ever really believing any of it. It's just Bale,
he has no sense of self.
Bale has described the character as an alien, and it's not literally, but it's I get what he means there because everything he has to say, for example, about Phil Collins, he probably read in Rolling Stone, in an interview with Rolling Stone. Everything in the book, there's a moment where he like has this encounter. It's a funny moment where he has this encounter with Tom Cruise on an elevator. They live in the same building. And he's like, I loved you in Bartender. And Cruise is like, it was called Cocktail, man. And he gets off the elevator and Patrick Bateman's incensed. But it's like, you get the sense like everything he knows about the world, he knows from MTV, Rolling Stone, Vanity Fair, New York Times. He's not somebody with real opinions, real experiences, anything. He's just somebody who just kind of pulls from whatever people will find acceptable. And what's more acceptable than the way a waiter speaks to him in a 5-star restaurant?
That's interesting.
Because I mean, the movie's pretty explicit about it. You hear the spiel, to use that word, from one waiter, and then they cut to a different waiter talking about a different dish, and not long after that, we go to Bateman talking with his guys, and it's the same very sort of warm and fuzzy, but also very pretentious way of speaking. Like he sounds like a Yale, Harvard guy.
Yeah.
You know, and he tells the detective that's where he went.
Oh, right. So the other thing about him is that all these guys, they keep mistaking each other for somebody else. They're all VPs at Pearson Pierce.
Right.
And so it's like they're all the same dude.
And what the heck is Pearson Pierce? What the heck is it? What do they do there? You know, like there's
Apparently
no
nothing.
sense of anything because we never see these guys working at all. When we see them in their office, they're listening to music. Bateman is never doing anything resembling work.
Right. They're just making reservations and going to lunch.
That's all they do. They're social vampires. That's all they do.
Yeah.
That's it.
So let's talk a little bit about the very violent scenes with the prostitutes, because there's two that kind of are just over the top.
Well, it's worth noting that this movie, hearing that it was coming out, everybody kind of braced for like, okay, this is probably going to be the most violent film ever made. And the movie was initially rated NC-17 for the sex scenes. That's it. Not for the violence, not for the gore. And there is some of that. But yeah, it was primarily for the sex scenes, which are, kind of absurd because what's offensive and shocking about it is that Bateman can't stop looking at himself in the mirror during the scenes. He is like, this is the show. I'm the star.
Yeah, like filming himself with these women, and all he is just like,
Yeah. So I mean, like it's meant to be funny, though. I guess the rating system when this came out, when they had to review it, they're like, no, I'm getting rid of that. So the severed head is okay, but no, you cannot have a guy enjoying himself during sex.
I think what they cut out is the part where he tortures them.
No, that was never there.
Really?
Nope, never there.
Oh.
No, 18. No, and there is an unrated version of it that you could watch it rated or unrated, and the only difference is 18 seconds of more thrusting.
More thrusting.
Sorry, but that's what it is. That's all it is.
Oh, okay.
No, because I thought the same thing too. I'm like, oh man, because in the book, and I won't describe it, but there's long scenes of sexual and violent torture. It's sickening. It's gross stuff. And I got to say to Bret Easton Ellis to give him a little credit. He always meant for the book to be nauseating. He always wanted to go too far, but he also wanted to like tear these guys down. It's like he was not a fan of guys in the 80s like Lee Iacocca and Donald Trump. So it's like he's going after these guys.
Yeah.
And the movie thankfully leaves a lot to the imagination, which I really admire because the film, I still find this movie really shocking. But yeah, some of the most awful things in it is just implied.
Yeah. Okay. The other thing...
Which is to say, this is still not a movie for the squeamish. If you're listening to this, like, do I need to see this? Maybe not.
If you've never seen it, it is shocking.
If you love Christian Bale and you want to see one of his best performances, if not his best performance, this is it. Yeah. But beyond that, maybe not.
Okay, so the part... It's like the second time he's with Christy.
Yes.
The prostitute. The other one, you said she was a part of the... production team?
Well, the second time he's with Christy and another woman, the one who's a real chatterbox, that's Guinevere Turner, who wrote the screenplay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Which is crazy because it's a pretty graphic scene that she has with him.
Yeah.
Because he kills her in bed. And then Christy's like, I'm out of here. And that's when she runs around the apartment, which is Paul Allen's apartment, because now Paul Allen, he's either dead or in London. We're not sure. But that's when she sees all the people that Patrick has killed.
There's corpses everywhere. It's a
Yeah.
real house of horrors. And then Bateman chases her with a chainsaw.
And this
Yeah.
is why I also thought this was not real, is because so she's running down the stairs, right? And it's going in like a circle. And he's just holding that chainsaw up and he just lets it drop. And she gets impaled. I mean, what are the odds?
Yeah, because this is a dog-eat-dog world. If you want to argue that the movie is on some level about white privilege, I think you could make that argument. But this is a world where, I mean, these guys, these men in suits, these sharks in suits, they're jackals. They're after each other. So I think having an advantage, putting, one of the competition, one of the VPs in prison would be really good for everybody involved. Because they're constantly, it's war for them, even though you never really see them. I mean, they're all like, other than their business cards, they're all flaccid.
Okay, but I don't think Christy really died like that.
I don't know if she died at all. I don't know if any of the prostitute scenes happen. Because, I mean, those scenes speak to him having this macho male fantasy. Not only, is he in bed with two women, but then he tortures them. It's completely sick, and it says a lot about how someone envisions themselves as this all-powerful macho male.
Yeah.
Not that I relate to this at all. I'm suddenly fearing my psychologist is going to use this in court one day.
Well, then, so the next scene is him with Reese Witherspoon, who's supposedly his fiance, even though he hates her.
This is like what happened if Elle Woods had married the first boyfriend in Legally Blonde, the first guy, not Luke Wilson, but that first guy. This is exactly what her life would have been like.
Okay, so he's drawing the chainsaw in the back of the woman, like at the restaurant on the table.
On the table, which is so funny, because that's what a child does. That's what
Right.
a child does with crayons while you're waiting for the food to come.
And she's just like, Patrick, we need to talk about, our wedding. And he's like, I'm not even in love with you. I have a need for homicide. She's just like, what are you even talking about? And then he leaves and she's like, where are you going? I have to go return the videotapes.
I have to return some videotapes.
So,
Which is a thing he says a lot in this movie.
yeah.
It's so fascinating to me, and I think that's probably the takeaway to this whole episode. It's interesting to me that you've always connected to this movie as a comedy.
Yes.
And it took me watching it with you to see it that way, because the first time I saw the film, I admired it, but I found it so upsetting.
Yeah, well, it is upsetting. But, I mean, when, he's with Paul Allen in his apartment and he's like, Huey Lewis in the news. And he's like telling him all these facts about, Paul Allen's just like,
It's an iconic scene.
yeah, I mean, Paul Allen's sitting there like, okay, and he's like, it's hip to be square. And, he's just like dancing and doing a moonwalk. I mean, what are we talking about? While he's pulling out, a brand new axe that's never been used. And Paul Allen's like, are you wearing a raincoat? Paul Allen, get out of there.
Paul Allen doesn't take him seriously. No, I don't know that
Yeah.
anybody really takes Patrick Bateman seriously. And
Yeah.
I think that's one of the things that makes him effective as a serial killer, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, it's great because as you recognize, and I think as the talent involved in the movie recognizes, there's something so ridiculous about Bateman. The fact that he has it all, but it's not enough. He has a perfect situation. He has all this money. He has a beautiful fiance. He's the envy of his crew on some level. But but even like, what is it? Like, you can't even say like murder makes him happy. It doesn't. Like, he just wants more and more and more. He's a total 80s victim of, he's like one of these consumerist vampires. He has to get whatever's new, whatever's the latest thing. That's the only thing that can satiate him. And
Yeah.
that's why murder is also too. It's like, because there's something new to that. It's the only kind of control he probably has in his life.
Now, there is another woman. Is it
Chloe Sevigny, who's his
her?
assistant.
But then the other one, Samantha Matheson.
Samantha Matheson, yeah, that's
Yeah.
the other girl that he's seeing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And behind someone's back.
Right.
Yeah. And by the way, do you remember the first movie that she did with Christian Bale?
Little Women.
Little Women.
Yeah.
Nothing weird about that.
Well, okay, so all the women most of them are blonde. He has a thing for blondes. So I think there's this, obviously he cares about an aesthetic here. But he has the fiance that he never sleeps with, the affair partner that he only sleeps with.
Yeah, he's definitely with Reese Witherspoon just because it looks
Yeah.
socially acceptable to be with her. Yeah.
And then the Chloe Sevigny, his secretary, who he almost murders. So it's a weird triangle of.
And it feels
of
like he's the
women.
most himself with the secretary. And then, there's that scene in the movie where he invites her to his apartment. He decides not to kill her. And in his way, he basically explains to her, like, you need to leave because I'm really dangerous. And she takes it like, oh, like...
Like, you're going to break my heart? She's like, I don't want to get hurt.
Right.
And he's like, I don't want to hurt you.
Yeah, and she doesn't realize that when her back was turned, he had a nail gun pointed at her head that he was about to use.
Yeah. So there is a certain point where the narrative kind of shifts, and he, I think, is in a full kind of blown psychosis.
Yeah, he goes around shooting people left and right. A car explodes. Yeah. And I gotta say, like, this is the only part of the movie that doesn't work for me because if it's satire, it's on the nose. If it's an all-out horror action sequence, it's very clumsy. The only thing about it that really sticks, like, it's kind of funny that he's killing so many people in a matter of like 3 minutes. The body count of this movie suddenly just goes through the roof.
And then there's no really follow-up with the
repercussions. Yeah. And again, like, if you want to look at it like look, this is what white privilege looks like in the 80s and otherwise. This is a white guy in a suit and tie. He's like, he's well connected or whatever. Nothing ever happens to him. You can say that, but this is pretty ridiculous. This is I just don't buy it. And I know the movie, because they had a low budget, they didn't have a ton of extras. And this scene in particular, it's like, where is it? It's New York. It doesn't matter how late it is. Like there's people everywhere. It's New York. Yeah.
This article, this is blooper.com. Okay. They say Bateman has a personality disorder, which I'm like, well, yeah, duh. That's kind of obvious. Okay. So we're talking about
Willem Dafoe. Yeah.
Couldn't remember his name. So he's talking to him about Paul Allen. Now,
the disappearance of Paul Allen, the Jared Leto character.
So this part is confusing. So if he really did kill Paul Allen and Paul Allen can't be found, these scenes make sense. Okay. Now I read that Willem Dafoe did 3 takes.
Right.
And it was like he did a take where he thought he was a suspect, one where he didn't suspect him, and one where he was
just
kind
wasn't
of
sure.
Indifferent. Yeah.
Yeah. And they basically took those 3 takes, those reaction shots, and blended together so that you're not sure.
Yeah. So we have
so there's
no
a wonderful
idea.
which is a great choice.
Yeah.
Because his performance is consistent, but Dafoe is so good that he can create these, distinctive choices. And it's great because, I mean, isn't that also what you want too? You don't want an actor to play one thing or another. You want the face to read different things, especially when it's an interrogation scene. You don't want it to be so on the nose.
Right. But the thing I was wondering is, at the end, the lawyer tells Patrick Bateman, like, I just had lunch with Paul Allen 10 days ago in London. Why wouldn't the William Dafoe character know that?
Because these guys are interchangeable. These guys, they matter so little. They take, they're greed and money monsters. They matter so little. They contribute so little in life that you just don't know which one is which in this world. It's a great criticism of these jerks.
Yeah. So that's why he ends up with an alibi that he doesn't really have.
It's crazy. It's like at any point, Patrick Bateman could be arrested for all these crimes that he did or didn't. He could, or he could spend the rest of his life free for all these crimes that he confessed to that no one will listen to. He just does not matter. The last line in the movie is, this confession has meant nothing. That's the last thing that he says in the movie. And it's, again, like, I feel like it's just this, this flaccid human being who, in his most deviant imagination, but also in his literal, actual life, doesn't mean anything.
Yeah. Well, so this is
the end.
And we're done. No. So I think that the movie being a critique of 80s male hedonism is probably the most accurate view of the film. Don't you think?
Yes. I mean, well, let me get a little serious for a moment, because this is something I like to talk about in my class, especially when we talk about films.
Oh, the professor is coming out.
Sorry. So, no, when we talk about the issue of a vigilante character, and most horror movie characters exist that way, because on some level Jason Voorhees is just somebody who's trying to keep his camp from all these stupid teenagers having sex and doing doobies and, you know, being free and fun and young. So it's like, you know, out comes the cleaver, because those kids, they, you know, Freddy Krueger is getting revenge for what happened to him a long time ago. Like a lot of these stories have a vigilante slant to them. So it's like, yeah, we understand why the killer is doing what they're doing. Bateman exists in the era of Bernie Goetz. Bernie Goetz was this guy in New York. He had been fired from a job. His girlfriend had left him. He had been mugged. He was pissed. He was this kind of wiry little white guy. He one day goes onto a subway with a loaded gun. These 3 African American young men come up to him. And apparently they asked for some money, and apparently they had screwdrivers on them. Because as we later learned, they were planning to go to an arcade and rob the machines. So Getz had a gun on him, and he fired on all 3 of them. And apparently he was reported, and there was no footage of it, he was reported to have said, you know, do you want another? Do you want another? He flees the subway. He flees the city. He's gone for a while. News is, you know, spreading that, you know, the subway shooting occurred. This is in 1984. People are looking for this guy. He returns to New York, and the first thing that happens is the word gets around that this shooting occurred because a guy almost got mugged in the subway. And people going, hey, like, all right, this is like Death Wish. Like somebody's standing up. Someone's, you know, the New York at that point was the most violent city in the world, I think, in the world, not just America. So people are going, okay, he's kind of a hero, the subway shooter. And then they interview the guy, they film the guy, and they put him on TV. And, you know, this is you know, Getz coming across as a really vile human being. The stuff he had to say while he's being filmed, people watch on TV like, oh, he's kind of gross. He's visibly kind of racist. He seems like he's unstable. Like, this is weird. So Getz goes on trial. It's 2 trials, and for the most part, it's like a slap in the hand. Over the years, you know, this, because after that, then Giuliani becomes mayor of New York City, and Giuliani cleans the city up. He basically takes these crack houses and whatnot, cleans them up, and, you know, they become like, you know, Virgin Records and like Victoria's Secret and Jamba Juice, yeah, and the M&M store, yeah. And as you know, as a kid who visited that area often as a child, I do remember being like places like my dad was like, keep walking, son. That's why I walk.
He
quite
walks
quickly.
so fast, you guys.
It's because my father would take me to New York and be like let's go.
He thinks he's constantly going to be murdered.
I do. Constantly. So on the one hand, you know, it was like anecdotal that crime went down for a period. Some have said it had something to do with Bernie Goetz. The other thing about Bernie Goetz is that the survivors of the shooting, 2 of them apparently wound up going to prison afterwards for a different crime. That hit the media, and people going, look at that, Bernie Goetz, he knew. So, wow. To this day, I mean, there's been so many awful things that have happened in New York subsequently. I'm not trying to make light of any of this. But to this day, there are those who said, hey, you know, Bernie Goetz, he was the guy who kind of changed the tide in New York. This is a guy who, like, you know, he stood up to the criminal element. You know, he's a, you know, and there are those who are like, no, Bernie Goetz is a vile person who existed in a very vile time and did a really vile thing. To this day, Bernie Goetz, you can still find him in New York. Apparently he's in Central Park. He is an advocate for the inhumane treatment of squirrels. It's a crazy story, but I like telling it, because if we're going to talk about vigilantism, because
I was not expecting you.
So no, like I find this interesting because, you know, look, like, we know why John Wick had to kill 1,000 people, because they killed his dog. It's like, well, screw those guys. They should have known better to mess with John Wick. in Death Wish, the Charles Bronson character, they kill his, I believe they kill his wife and his child, either that movie or the sequels, and he basically goes and shoots everybody in New York. So it's like these, and by the way, Hamlet is also a vigilante too. Fiction is full of these stories. And in real life, it's I find it certainly a lot harder to go like, well, that's justified. No, like we're talking about real human beings. We're talking about real lives.
Yeah.
And the thing about Bateman is that we can talk about him, as a symbol. We can talk about him how, he's this glamorous yuppie who goes and kills those he finds a threat or those who are beneath him. And it's like, okay, like you could say that's fun, that's satire, because it's like a parody of these suit and tie types that we glamorized during the Me decade. But the thing that I think this movie gets so right is there is no backstory. There is no scene where he's abused by his parents. And the book didn't have that either. There's no sense of who this guy is. Does he have a family? Did he ever really love anyone other than himself? None of that. And because of that, you can't create sympathy for this guy.
Yeah.
And the movie will not let him off the hook. And by the way, it's because you had an actor who generously played the guy not as a hero but as a problem. You have a screenwriter who did not want to basically take the Bret Easton Ellis novel and make it not accessible. It's an uncomfortable movie, but the satire is firm, and it's also a film that hates Patrick Bateman, which is great because, look, I love the Friday the 13th movies. I love the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, but those movies love Jason. Those movies love Freddy. Those movies, the Halloween movies, they love Michael Myers. They love these guys. And I think it's smart that it's like, no, like, let's not celebrate this guy, because to an extent what he's doing, he's acting like a vigilante, a moral vigilante, even though he's a part of the moral cesspool. He's killing prostitutes because they're prostitutes. He's killing homeless people because they're a problem, but he's freaking vile.
Yeah.
And so it's like, it's this three-tiered thing. You've got Bale's performance, Guinevere Turner's sharp screenplay, and you got Mary Harron, who doesn't make the movie. It's a good movie and it's a well-made movie, but it's not so stylish and flashy that it makes any of this look cool. Bateman always looks like a dork, always, and it's like, that's why Bale is so good, because not only is he playing this character that seems like everything he knows about life, all of his social skills come from television and magazines and MTV videos, but he's also somebody, like, his performance does not give himself an out, and I love that.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
That's
okay.
it. There's going to be a test on Friday. I hope you took notes. Sorry about that.
No, you're very passionate.
I hope that was entertaining. No, because as a kid, the Bernie Getz thing really haunted me. I found that really disturbing, honestly. Because as a little kid, I grew up in New Jersey, and New York is just over the.
Yeah, I mean, I think.
But I was also aware of these guys, like the Iacocca, Donald Trump. Donald Trump, who gets name checked twice in this movie, by the way.
Donald Trump and Ivana.
Yeah.
I was like, what?
Yeah. And this is the age of Gordon Gekko, and it's weird that Justin Theroux is in this. I like Justin Theroux a lot. His hair is slicked back. He looks just like Charlie Sheen in Wall Street. Like it's a dead ringer. Yeah. I didn't know who he was when he made this. I didn't know who Josh Lucas was.
Yeah, I don't.
They're great, by the way. Everybody's great.
I knew who Christian Bale was. That's it.
It's one of my favorite Willem Dafoe. Like, Willem Dafoe, he does a lot of supporting roles. He doesn't always play the lead, but I think he's fantastic in this. I love him in this. But no, Bale, I'd say this is his best performance. It was so surprising, for one thing. The choices he makes are pretty crazy, but it's a performance about acting. It's about someone who is pulling whatever he can to give a performance, and even he's not buying it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, okay, in conclusion, kind of to wrap it up, you think most of this stuff is in his head. Yeah. And that's great, because, again, I hate this guy. I do. I love Bale's performance. I hate Patrick Bateman. I've never liked him. Even as a kid, my God. Even as a kid, when I read the novel, I'm like, this guy's disgusting. This isn't cool. This is like when I was a kid and I'd be reading about Jeffrey Dahmer. It was like that. It's like, this guy lives by himself, and this guy's read some gross stuff.
Well, I didn't read the book about Dahmer.
Oh.
I did read Helter Skelter, though, when I was about 13, the book about Charles Manson. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because there are, like, Norman Bates is extremely sympathetic. I care about that guy. I find his story to be really heartbreaking. And it's like when he's getting rid of the murders that he doesn't realize that he committed, he genuinely wants to do the right thing, even though he doesn't understand how much of a problem he is, which is so fascinating. But I never rooted for Patrick Bateman. The book, I think on some level, I don't know if Bret Easton Ellis wants us to root for him. I always found the book fascinating. I never found it likable, and I stuck with it and I finished it because I'm like, this is a banned book. I got to read this thing. I may not be able to read this again. So I read the whole thing when I was young, and I was very happy to go on to stuff that was much more frivolous when I was over.
Yeah.
But yeah, the movie doesn't like Bateman, and I think that's a really smart thing.
Oh, we didn't talk about the Paul Allen's apartment after it gets taken over and repainted.
Yeah, it's my favorite scene in the movie. Yeah, so at one point,
let's talk about that.
Bateman goes to the apartment. He's got this breather mask on.
He's going to clean up the bodies.
Yeah, which is, and from what's visible from the prostitute fleeing the apartment, clearly there's a lot of stuff he has to clean up. A lot of people, a lot of blood. It's a murder house. Yeah.
Yeah. So he walks in, like the door's kind of open, and he's like, it's all clean. He goes to this closet where there's supposed to be bodies hanging, and it's paint cans and paint. And then the realtor comes over and says,
and she's showing the apartment to somebody, and he kind of like walks past that, and he's looking around like, where's all the bodies? Where's the corpses? Where's the severed heads?
Yeah.
And she walks over to him and basically asks like, oh, you have my 2:00 appointment? He's like, yeah. And she's like, I don't have a 2:00 appointment. Who are you? What are you doing here?
Yeah.
And it's kind of like the bartender at the beginning of the film. I think what we could take is that on the one hand, we could go something really weird or conspiratorial, and you had a good point about this. Like, this is New York.
Okay, this is what I thought could have happened. I probably read this somewhere, but he really did do some of the murders, and now I don't really know that I think that, but this is a theory. Okay, he did have some bodies there. I don't know how many, and he was going to go clean them up. However, Paul Allen isn't there anymore. He's not paying his rent. Maybe he really was murdered by Patrick Bateman. And now things are starting to stink. They're checking things out, and they go in. They're like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. Instead of calling the cops, they clean it up. They repaint it because all they want to do is re-rent this place. They don't want it to be the place that had a serial killer store his bodies, because then you can't make money off of that. Now it's going to be a crime scene. And this is, New York in the 80s. Again, we're talking about money. We're talking about making money, power. That's all they care about. So that was kind of a theory I thought was plausible because of the themes of the film, and that it's not just these Wall Street guys it's like everybody's kind of in on this money-making situation. It's not just Paul Allen and Patrick Bateman and all these interchangeable yuppies,
It's the me decade in general.
It's everybody, Well, it's anybody who has any kind of resources or say in society. Obviously, it's not the homeless people. It's not the prostitutes. They're the ones that are being killed. So it's everybody else. So I thought that was an interesting possibility.
It's a well played scene because it definitely feels like the ending of The Sixth Sense. It's kind of like it feels like the rug's been pulled out from underneath. He's like, what is happening?
He's so confused.
Different. He's confused, and and the actress who's playing the real estate agent, she's playing it very neutral, which is brilliant. It's either that she's aware that there was something horrible in this apartment, it's been cleaned up, so it's her job just to sell this apartment, or indeed, like, who are you? Why are you here? And by the way, the fact that nobody can keep anybody straight, I think one of the possibilities that, frankly, Bateman is in the wrong place. He could be in the wrong apartment.
Well, that's true.
Completely.
It's not like there's multiple apartments that have the same layout. You know what I mean?
But because, the names are interchangeable, the places are interchangeable. None of these places look lived in. What did look lived in is when he opens the closet, and instead of bodies, it's like a mop that looks like it's been there forever.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like I really feel like if anything indicates that the movie is mostly in this guy's mind, I think this is the scene.
Okay, so if he, in my personal opinion, he did kill that homeless man and his dog, then the rest of everything is going on in his head. He could be in a moment of psychosis in this scene where he's visualizing, oh, I'm going to go back to Paul Allen's apartment. I got to clean up the murders that I've committed, but they're not. It's not a real murder.
He has an alibi for Paul Allen, and the movie has an alibi for Paul Allen because somebody saw Paul Allen, and then that's at the end of the film, it's going like, no man, Paul Allen's alive. I just had lunch with the guy, but it's like, well, which do you know?
Is it really Paul Allen?
These guys are all the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I could go either way, which is what I like about it.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think the only person who really knows what's up is the secretary. She's looking at his little murder book of all his sick doodling fantasies. And a lot of those, by the way, those who wonder, like, how bad was the book? The imagery in there is right out of the book.
Yeah.
So take that as a warning. But I feel like that's it. I mean, we're seeing how damaged this guy's mind is.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it doesn't tell us how he got there, and it doesn't tell us to feel sorry for him, which is great. At the end of the movie, he's in his own version of purgatory.
Yeah. I think it's a personality disorder followed by somebody who potentially did murder somebody that knocked him into a complete psychotic state. And now he's just trying to survive, but he can't because he's living in his head.
There are moments where we're supposed to, he goes to a dry cleaner's to get rid of what he says is a cranberry stain. There's another moment where we see him fondling a bit of hair, and like, where did the hair come from?
Yeah.
I feel like those clues all can lead to very plausible explanations.
Yeah. Or when he's at the ATM and it says, "Feed me a stray kitten."
Right.
And it's like, well, obviously the ATM's not really telling him
That's
to
a
do
weird
that.
part of town. A bank really wants a lot from you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so how many stars?
When I saw it, 2.5, but the last two times I've seen it, I thought 3.5.
Yeah.
This is a very strong film. I love the choices that Heron and Guinevere Turner made. I feel like the movie is still potent and shocking, but it's funny enough, and I think it's smart enough in how it deals with this that I don't want anything else. I don't want a sequel. I don't want a remake.
Yeah.
So yeah, 3.5 for me. How about for you?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I think three for the comedy and the satire portions. The violence and all that other stuff. This is, I think, my third time seeing it. And this guy, you're always like, okay, close your eyes. Like, you never wanted me to watch that one where he's like filming them.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so for the purposes of this, I was like, all right, I'm going to watch the whole thing.
We're older now.
Yeah.
Nothing.
I'm like,
Life has shocked us enough. It's like, this movie isn't going to do anything.
Well, and
We were so innocent when we saw this movie. We're in our early 20s. We just got married. Hey, want to watch a movie?
And I'm like, no, I can't watch this.
Yeah.
No, so I did watch it.
I forgot about that. I was
Yeah.
like, the first time I was like, yeah, don't violence, yes, but nude scene.
Well,
God
I
forbid.
mean, but okay, so this is the first time I actually watched him where he's flexing in the mirror and
he's just watching them. The fact that he's thrusting, you don't care. It's about a guy who just loves to watch himself. Yeah.
So I actually found the fact that he would murder them afterwards more disturbing.
Yeah.
Obviously, than any of the sex stuff. So if you haven't seen the movie, just be warned about that. But it was, I think 3 stars for me.
Okay. Mm-hmm. A few things I want to add is on Broadway, it did exist, American Psycho, the musical.
Oh.
That is a real thing.
Oh.
I don't know what that was about. I don't know who was in it. I can't sing any of the songs for you right now. I don't know. I have no idea.
It's like,
I don't know if it was
look
campy.
at this business card. Yeah. What?
Exactly. Yeah, I don't know if he was singing like Huey Lewis songs. I don't know. I don't know.
Gosh.
What else to say about this? My dear friend Zach, I love you, Zach. One of my dear friends who often listens to the show. One of my favorite stories about him from college.
I was thinking about this.
Oh yeah, no, this is great because Zach was he was roommates with a guy who's a very talented musician, and he's a part of a band that had a #1 hit a couple years ago. Anyway, so I won't name Patrick Bateman. So Zach was watching American Psycho, and Patrick, I think, brings his then girlfriend into the
You
apartment.
can't say the line though.
Oh, I can't?
No.
All right. What? Then never mind. A completely pointless anecdote.
No, but so Zach's watching.
Will it make
the
this
movie.
podcast NC-17 if I use the word?
Maybe, but it's where like the prostitute's in the bath. and Patrick
Yes.
tells her to wash herself.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so then his friend walked
Walked in and he's like,
Yeah.
"What are you watching, man?" Yeah.
And Zach's like, "Oh,
Yeah.
sorry, Zach, for outing you." So it's just a funny story.
Now they all know Zach. Sorry. And then when this film came out, Lionsgate did a really interesting gimmick to get people to see the film. I mean, I was going to see the film no matter what, but this is back when they were known as a studio that would release the movies that others would not release. They put out Dogma after Miramax was like, nope. They put out O and The Rules of Attraction. Anyway, for American Psycho, not only did they release the film, but they had this thing where if you give them your email address, you will every day leading up to the film's release and afterwards, every day you'll get an email from Patrick Bateman.
Oh, no.
And they had a writer on the film. They've never said who. I think it might have been Bret Easton Ellis. but every day I got an email sent to me.
Oh, you signed up for it?
I sure did. Yeah, like I want to. And here's the thing: not only did I sign them up, but before I left that college, I printed every single one of them up and I put it together. I still have it.
You do?
You know why? Because it's now valuable. Because it's the unofficial American Psycho sequel.
Oh.
It's considered part of canon. It's pretty
That's
hilarious that it's all
crazy.
these emails. Yeah, and some of it is Patrick Bateman reacting to the movie. Some of it he's talking about modern day. Because Patrick Bateman, spoiler, he doesn't die at the end.
He's
so
like-
he's still out there.
He's like, I went to the movie.
Yeah.
And then he's talking about it. I sat down and I had a popcorn. And I was almost terrified that someone really stinky was going to sit next to me. Thankfully, it was Paul Allen.
Totally plausible. I could see that. See? Don't you want to read that? Yeah, so I have that. And that, you know, I don't know. It was kind of a perversely funny thing that, you know, I would check my email every day. You know, and sometimes like, oh, mom didn't send me an email, or I didn't hear from my friend back at home. Oh, Patrick Bateman sent me an
my
email.
gosh.
Okay.
You know what? I feel
I'll
like I
read
should
that.
have known this before we got married.
Well, when you go through those boxes that are labeled 2000 and you see the stack of Patrick Bateman emails that are all stapled together, now you'll know.
Now I know.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. That's funny.
That's all I have to say. I think I've confessed more than enough, although this confession has meant nothing.
Nothing. All right. Well, is that it?
That's all I got. I'm not saying anything else.
All right. Well, I think that concludes our discussion of American Psycho.